Hi guys, welcome back. So the next thing we're going to talk about are rules. Rules can be a little confusing at first if you use other monitoring systems. Other monitoring systems, you tend to bind a rule to a host. In Foglight, it's the other way around. You bind hosts to rules. That sounds a little confusing at first, but I'm just going to go ahead and pop over. I was originally working on our NIC Explorer dashboard, but I'm going to go ahead and pop over here to Administration, Rules, Rule Management. As you can see, there's a laundry list of rules, and that's fine. I'm going to go and sort down to the OS NIC only. There's only one alarm that comes with that by default, and we'll explore that in a second. I'm going to go to the old rule manager because I think it's just a little more intuitive and sort by NIC. Sort by NIC. As you can see, we have the same exact rule right here. Now, there's a rule I'm going to throw out for, oh, I guess that's a double entente there. There's a rule out there. You cannot change the default rules. You can, but if there's ever an upgrade, it will overwrite all of your work. So I'm going to recommend you hit this little copy button right over in the corner before you start playing any games. So I'm going to hit copy just to start us off. Just hit, sure I want to copy. Should prompt me in a few seconds with the screen. And I'm just going to call it copy of collision, and that's totally fine. I'm going to hit save and take us back to the rule management page. Old rule page, collision. We're going to remove the cartridge name because it's no longer associated with it. And you can see we now have the copy of collision. Let's go ahead and edit that. Let's fool around with that just a little. Give our real estate back. At first, the screen can be pretty daunting. Let's start on the far left tab as opposed to the second tab, which it starts us off for some reason. We have a name. We have a rule description. We should call this, these are the kind of, if an end user sees this screen, they're going to want to know what the rule does. We're going to say counts collisions. If you don't know what a collision is, that's totally fine. Rules are delivered basically by these two things. We can do them by other options, but basically these two options here. They can either fire every something minutes, every 10 minutes, whether the data is there or not. If you have an empty table in a database, you can still run it against it. Or data driven. When data goes into a table, it causes a trigger, which in turn lets Foglight know to run its rules. This is the preferred method because it's a little more efficient. We come down the list and we can see what are called topologies, and these should look a little bit familiar to you from that dashboard. This is just kind of another way of looking at them. It's not exact, but the terms are going to start to become pretty clear. Now I'm going to hit this green button right here. You'll notice that it discovered some impacted objects. Foglight.contoso.local, and of course the agent name we chose. It's starting to become a little more clear why we use the standard names instead of inventing our own. Had I had 100 NIC agents out there, 100 would have been listed. But in this case, we just have the one that meet this one particular topology type. Okay? This is how you verify what's in there. One of the cool things is we can actually go through and say where name like and come up with some additional logic. We could just say fog. We scroll through and didn't find anything. Where agent.name like, and then suddenly we get results. So this programming language can be a little confusing. We're going to talk a lot more about it, but just know this can be really, really optimized. And I'm going to hit OK. So now that we know it's going to impact this one agent on this one host in this particular example, we're going to go over the conditions and alarms. I did hit save, so we'll just ignore that. Foglight alarms come in 3 severities: warning, critical, and fatal. It's up to your business logic to determine what your decision is. Normal, of course, is nothing's wrong. So we're going to go into warning. So if the collision rate is greater or equal than what's in the registry. Well, what's in the registry? This, if you know programming, this is a variable. So I'm going to pop that in here. And the number is 10. So if the collision is greater than 10, and we can tune this ourselves, or we can hard code it. We can even just say type the number 10 if we felt the urge. It doesn't have to be variable, but you can imagine a reusable variable is a little more intuitive. What is the collision rate? Well, let's go ahead and copy this Again, bring it up into this little guy up here called the condition query. Paste it in. Execute. We currently have no collisions. Well, that makes sense. We're in a virtual environment. We're not using hubs. What are the odds of a collision? So what do you say we do something a little crazy? What if the collision rate is greater or equal to -1? Let's make sure our code is somewhat reasonable by hitting this checkbox. It'll do a little logic check for us. Success validation, no problem. Let's even run this code inside the condition query analyzer. True. True meaning, yes, there's a problem. This situation is true. There is something going wrong. Had that been 1, it would get a false. No, there isn't a problem. So you might want to write that down. So we're intentionally creating a problem, right? We're saying if our collisions are ever, obviously you would never have a -1 as your collision rate, but we're saying if there's, it could be CPU utilization, it could be anything else. It doesn't matter. If we have greater than -1 collisions, fire an alarm. Let's just go ahead and hit save. Next time the rule engine collects some NIC data, it's going to execute this condition on there. Notice it's, how do I know the next time it's the data comes in as opposed to time? Because we have it set to data driven. And if you remember correctly, we're bringing in data. If we go back to administration agents, agent status, click on the NIC agent and edit the properties, we set it to collect data every minute. So let's go up to the alarm screen and see if anything's come in yet. This is for the fog lights, for the system clock. We haven't got anything else yet. Let's go ahead and just refresh a couple more times. Well, matter of fact, I'm just going to pause and wait for this to fill in. We'll talk a little about the alarm screen when we get some more alarms. Alright, so I'm back. So as we can see, we have this original system clock change, which I'll go ahead and mess another time. That just means one of my clocks isn't set right. But as we can see, the host has checked in. We'll go from left from right. So we can see when the problem came in. Has the NOC acknowledged that they've taken action? And has the problem been cleared? What's the host that impacted? Now this may not always have a host. If it's a data store, it's a disk, might not have a host. If it's something proprietary you created, might not be in what they call the host model in FogLight. We saw a little of that host model. But we did get an instance information, the loopback, and Ethernet 0. And we have the wording of the alarm right here. Let's go ahead and click on that. In this case, a collision is a hit. We can go ahead and acknowledge that we've received the problem. We can go ahead and add some notes real quick and say that I opened ticket 1, 2, 3, 4. Hit add. You can search these these notes, by the way. Just make sure your time is set. I can even say clear, as in I believe the problem is resolved now. FogLight will create a new alarm if the problem returns. We continue to scroll over and we can see the name of the agent, or I'm sorry, the rule that we created, copy of collision. So make sure to name those intelligently. Copy of is probably not a good one. And the agent type that was pulled from. So we can really get a lot of explore the data really well here. Now I've clicked on it. I've go ahead and clicked on instance. You'll notice I have a lot of cool stuff here. I have the NIC overview link. Now I can see information about that NIC. I'm going to come back down. I'm going to click on it again. And I have the I/O stats. I can bring all that up. Let's go ahead and come back. Click down again. Packet set. Anything that's associated with this particular object is right there. Let's say there's nothing associated with it. It's a proprietary thing that you created. You could just raw explore the data if you wanted to just by clicking this. This appears to be running a little slow. There we go. Here's all the actual collections, when they started, when they finished, and what their values were. We can collect related objects and just flip over. This allows you within clicks to really explore the data without having to jump in, type your top command, and all that stuff. It also lets you look at the history of the problem. It allows you to go back in time and say, hey, is this actually a problem, or is this something that happened yesterday at this time too? I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here. You're welcome to come around and explore that. And as you can see, that other alarm came back that I cleared earlier. It returned. Let's say you wanted to filter this away. We can just go ahead and hit filter. And we could just say, you know what, we only want to see critical alarms. Update. You notice nothing appeared. Okay, let's just say we only wanted to see warnings. And there it's back. So this is cool. This makes sense. Let's go back into rule management. Go back in old rule manager. Let's edit our collision again. Let's come back inside. And now you notice we created a warning. That worked out really well. Let's copy our warning. into the critical. Except now I want to say if it's equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, let's go ahead and do a critical error message. Now you'll notice the more restrictive condition that's met increases the severity of the problem. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the alarm message to, oh my god, world is ending. We'll just hit the little green button to make sure that we did our work right. We did not. Why didn't it work right? Java needs 2 equal signs. 1 equal sign means assign a value, 2 means evaluate the value. And there it's working. So let's go back to the alarm screen. Let's see if we've got any results yet. Nothing yet. So we'll just wait a few more minutes and see if that comes through. Hit refresh a couple more times. Well, wait. We'll come back in here while we're waiting. Finish this up. Now I'm going to go back into our copy. Now you probably noticed both the loopback and the physical interface were included. We're going to hit search, scroll down, physical interface, I'm sorry, the loopback interface, and the physical interface. We probably don't want that. So what we want to do, we want to say where name like, and then we're, let's go back here. Search, gotta find the actual name here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pause the video while... Sorry about that. Took me a minute to find where I was. So, okay, we're back here. We're hitting OK. We can see the multiple NICs that are impacted. I'll just go ahead and select here, and we can see various other objects that we can sort of manipulate. But what I'm most interested in here is the nickname. So in this case, I just wrote this code out real quick, where nickname is like loopback. Hit OK. And now our rule only impacts the loopback interface. Ethernet is gone. Well, that's not helpful. Well, there's 2 ways we could have handled that problem. We can either just replace that with ETH, scroll down, and you may have noticed it's now only impacting the Ethernet interface, or we could have put back to loop, and we could say where nickname not like. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And now you can see we have our Ethernet interface back. This is probably a better solution since it's a little more controlling. We'll go ahead and hit save. So now it should get rid of all the loopback interfaces after we clear the alarms. So I'm going to come back up to the alarm screen. Quick refresh to make sure we're set in the same time period. Let that load. Oops, do I have the filter on? I do have the filter on. Let's update that. And you'll see with the 2 critical objects, we still have the loopback interface here. Now watch this. If I clear these 2, that's giving Foglight the signal. The next time the data comes in, I want you to go ahead and confirm that these alarms are actually cleared. I'm going to hit pause because it's going to take a couple minutes for that data to come in. And so we're back. It's only been about a minute. As we can see, my new custom message has appeared. Oh my god, world is ending. Copy of collision. It still has all the relative links here. You can see the severity is also relinkable, so you can kind of drill yourself into a loop there. But you notice it's only impacting Ether. I'm going to refresh again just to make sure I'm not, incorrect here. It's always possible. Rendering sure is taking a little bit, but as you can see right here, we haven't increased no new alarms. That's because we scoped out. That's what's called scoping, getting rid of all the stuff that we're not actually using. So we got rid of the loopback interface. Told somebody the loopback interface is going real high, they'd probably look at you like you're crazy. If you told them there were collisions on the loopback, it probably wouldn't work out very well. So what I'm going to go ahead and, let's just go real quick through the rest of the rule interface here. I'm going to go back into collisions. I'm going to create a little more real estate. So we've poked around at collision conditions. We can create actions from here, including send emails, send SNMP traps, or run a script. We can actually remotely log into machines and run scripts. We'll cover that in a whole other lesson. That's a lesson unto itself. But just know that if you need, say you have JBoss crashes every day at 2 o'clock and you know it for a fact the problem is not going to get fixed for a while, you can go ahead and have Foglight reach out, SSHN, restart it for you, automate your knock. Save you guys a lot of time. We're gonna skip variables now. We're actually gonna talk a little more about those later. I think right now is just not the time. We're gonna talk a little more about that in scripting. Here we can apply a schedule. We can actually say this only applies at the beginning of the day, business week, always. If you don't put anything, it's always. Blackout, we can say, hey, end of the day, this is ignored. What these mean is managed through administration schedules. You can actually create your own schedules. So, hey, you only want to get notified on high NIC utilization after midnight, between midnight and 5. You can totally do that here by applying this rule. As you can see, you really don't need to be a programmer to copy an existing rule, disable the old one, and apply a schedule. We can also do some behavioral stuff. Let's click over here. And by default, fire for one consecutive action is true. One time the I/O is already high. But we can make it check 10 times. So in this case, we know that the agent checks in every minute. And we want to make sure that 10 collections are true. Some basic math tells us that this will take 10 minutes for it to be complete. Why is this complete in fire and alarm? Well, why is this helpful? Well, you know, brief spikes in hard disk utilization, brief spikes in CPU utilization, generally not a big deal. So you might just say, you know what, just fire 3 times its high. So the collection might only be 5 minutes apart. That's fair, 15 minutes. You could also say something to the effect of fire if high collisions for the last 5 evaluations. You know what? Wait 15 minutes. The problem might just go away. There's a lot of ways that you can customize without being a programmer, without having any advanced knowledge whatsoever. The last tab are rule variables. Again, we're going to cover this a lot more in the scripting section. Really not the time and place for this. For now, what you should be walking away with is the ability to take any existing rule, copy it, disable the original one. Remember, never edit the original one because it might get reactivated or changed during upgrades. Then you should be able to go into a rule, tune what it impacts using this where NIC name, which is a property available right here. Like or not like, don't forget that little, forget the syntax right here. If you know SQL, the syntax makes sense to you. If not, just kind of play with it. And you should be able to come into the conditions, not necessarily know variables just yet, but you should be able to come in here, change these values, test them with the condition query, update the custom commands such as check out wiki site for details, check out mywiki.com for help, verify, save all your work. Right now, this is probably something definitely worth doing. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, play around with scoping, scope on other values like name, bandwidth. I think I saw there's an option. I think it was interface bandwidth. Agent.name is another one you should try, like agent.name like. Play around with that. Go ahead and try to create some conditions for warning, fatal, critical. Mess with those. Mess with the logic. Change custom alerts. Change the message. There's a lot to play around with here, so I want you guys to go ahead and jump in on that. Go ahead and let me save this before I end up doing something silly and close this without thinking. We're going to call this Foglight Administrative Course, Foglight Administrative Exercises. Perfect. We'll worry about spelling later. Go ahead and do all that. Poke around. Have fun. Don't worry about the interface too much. If you don't get everything, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just try and replicate what you saw here, and you're well on your way to getting this through. Next time we're up, we're going to talk a little bit about variables, because hard coding these numbers is kind of silly.